Now, innovation is very important for all nations, for all corporations. And this is important not just for increasing competitiveness or for creating wealth. That is a very important goal by itself. But innovation is also very important for, I think, allowing people, especially young people, to give sort of voice to their aspirations, to make the dreams become a reality. And this important element of giving hope to young people and creating that kind of social, let's say, aspirations broadly in society is an important domain, an important objective of innovation today. Now, you also see innovation changing in its emphasis. A lot of the focus of innovation, I would say, the last 20 years or beyond, was on improving productivity and trying to basically focus more on wealth creation. Today, the focus of innovation has shifted not just only to wealth creation, but going beyond wealth creation to also include other factors like how is innovation going to help us achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals? How is innovation going to help us achieve or sort of solve, or at least try to mitigate the climate crisis? And these are very important elements for our future survival, for our future generations. So I think today people look at innovation not just from a pure productivity perspective, but also a perspective of how does it in fact help to create a better future for us and for future generations. And this is, I think, a very important element of innovation going forward. I have had the good fortune of being able to live and work and teach in academic institutions around the world, including in Asia, mainly India, Europe, and in America. And I do see some interesting, sort of common points and some differences. What I see as common is this urge amongst young people across the world to create something. This urge to create something, to do good for the world is very strong and prevalent, I think, in the current generation of young people around the world. And that's a common theme. I see a great interest in becoming entrepreneurs or in entrepreneurship across the globe. Young people in India, young people in America and Europe, many of them, they actually now want to become entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is an important part of the overall objectives of many young people. Now, having said this, there are some interesting differences that I see across Europe and America especially, and this often relates to the ease of scaling up of entrepreneurial businesses. If you start a business in America, let's say in one state like California, it's very easy for an entrepreneur to access the entire US market, which is a population of roughly 400 million people. And in fact, you can also access Canadian market also equally easily. It's a common system, common language, and a common mode of doing business. In contrast, if an entrepreneur, let's say in Portugal, it is extremely difficult, despite the European common market, to do business with customers and serve them well in a different market, let's say like Poland. There are still very important cultural differences, still very important language differences. You have to set up operations to handle multiple languages. And so scaling up in Europe is much more complicated and a cumbersome process for entrepreneurs. And this is one of the big drawbacks of entrepreneurs in Europe, that you have to, in fact, scale up in multiple languages, adjust to different cultures, and that imposes an additional burden on entrepreneurs in Europe. So scaling up is much easier, certainly in US. Of course, the access to venture capital is also much easier in US compared to Europe, and that does make an important difference. If you look at India and China, for example, certainly you see India and China both have the benefits of scale. So entrepreneurs in India and China can also scale up relatively easily as in the US. India and China are also seeing slight differences in the source of funding for their ventures. While in India, the traditional VC companies are getting more increasingly active, and there's more and more support for the new unicorns being created in the country. In China, a lot of the VC support is coming from corporate VC efforts. So large tech companies, large companies in China are supporting a lot of these entrepreneurial startup ventures, and relatively less in proportion coming from traditional VC sources. So the sources of financing is a little different. But having said this, the scenario for entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs in both India and China is extremely active today, especially India, which has gone through, I would say, a new phase of digitalization in the last 10 years, and coupled with the India stack of APIs, based on the global, based on the national identification system Aadhaar that India has implemented, is a very powerful, democratic, bottom-up way of digitalization of the economy. So on the whole, I think a lot of great economic activity in entrepreneurship is happening around the world, and we'll continue to see that in the future.